YouTube channel or the video or anything, thanks for clicking. This video is about what I'm going to call problematic allyship, although the term ally is questionable here. But essentially the idea that people who think that they are allies are in fact the exact opposite. And the most unfortunate thing is that calling them out on their allyship labels sort of the person calling them out as the problematic one or the drama seeker, because everyone says, oh, they're just trying to help. So this is going to be taking a look at why that mentality of they're just trying to help can actually be very, very damaging. This video is very long. I tried to leave it as little minimally edited as possible. I thought that was important for transparency, to sort of watch live reactions and live processing of things. There are timestamps. Go ahead and put it on 2x speed, you know, whatever works for you. Again, I apologize that it is long, but I thought that that seemed important. So the subject of this is basically that I made an Instagram post showing a lot of different examples of, yes, we'll use the word that makes people upset, mansplaining. A whole bunch of examples of instances in which I'd had to deal with that in like the past 36 hours. So I make this Instagram post. And there are some good faith interactions in the comments. And then there was one that was particularly bad. And you'll hear in the video me make a lot of caveats about how, again, I feel bad about singling someone out. I don't want this to look like it's drama or trying to start anything. My goal here is definitely education, because I found that this culture of don't speak about it, ignore the trolls, you're not going to change their mind, actually results in people not realizing how prevalent this problematic allyship is. Because you just don't engage, you move on, and it's so damaging for your own personal image to go after someone that you usually just leave it alone. I'm choosing not to do that. I want to show you guys exactly what this looks like. Educational. And at the time of the recording, I did feel bad about attacking this person. However, in the 12 hours since I have done the live stream that this is an edit from, I have learned additional information that I no longer feel guilty. So anyways, I apologize for all the qualifiers that you are going to hear, but I did not edit them out. And as always, please, if you like the video, please drop the like, comment, consider subscribing to the channel, turning notifications on, all those wonderful things. But otherwise, enjoy with, I don't know, Nessa EDU, let's call it that. That was my post. That's all the backup on it. Normal comments, sorry you had to deal with this. I'm used to all of these. Then someone who is genuinely curious and saying, can you explain mansplaining, or how does someone give their opinion or thoughts without falling into the trap of mansplaining? Great engagement, great question, right? That's exactly how you do it. That is exactly how you do it. You ask a question. And that's the example I give. This is really good. He said, my first reaction was annoyance that you used mansplaining, but I'm glad I asked instead of reacting. So anyway, so that was a great interaction, right? Where you can be annoyed, you have every right to be annoyed, but it was a genuine good faith question of, please explain this to me, I want to understand. And that's what good allies do. You can screw up, you can do the wrong thing, but you're willing to listen and talk about it. So someone else who commented, this is a very well-known cosplayer in Dota. He has absolutely beautiful, incredible craftsmanship. The timber saw at ESL 1 way back when, I think it was like 2015 or something, that one and blew everyone away. Really, really good Sven. Like, this is a person whose comment is problematic. This is a person who, I'm sorry that you're getting directly called out, but it's a public comment and it's too good of an example. So, it says, how do you expect people to disagree with you so you don't get offended? My perception of the word rape differs from yours. Hence, we disagree on an opinionated thing. But once I try to elaborate why my perception is different, I'm mansplaining, which to me is kind of an offensive word. Would love to see some people react to womansplaining. So is offended by the concept mansplaining, brings up, well, why isn't womansplaining a thing? Then again, this is great. He's trying to be respectful. He really is. Huge respect for the way you're trying to shape the community. I have a feeling he's not going to feel that after I do this. I'm sorry again, but I shouldn't have to apologize based on what we're going to read through. I don't want to be dismissed as a man every time I have a different opinion. You can point out why people are wrong, lead to a discussion or an argument. It's okay to disagree on stuff. Very accurate. So I respond, right? I consider this a decently good faith engagement. Your perception of rape is going to be wrong if you think it's a universal word for destroy. Sorry, it is. That word is damaging, triggering, negative, and in English, irreversibly tied to sexual assault. It can work differently in other languages if you have been introduced to, and it can also work if it's been introduced to you in English as a synonym for destroy. So you can view it in your head as destroy. Just because you personally see it that way doesn't mean it's okay to say. It's not destroy, it's sexually assault. Don't use it for anything else. And it's worse than sexually assault. I just keep saying that. But it's worse. Okay, and so then we dive into the issue with the post. I mean, the issue is that he thinks his opinion on, that rape can be used casually is a difference of opinions. And if he were to voice it, that would be him just being a man, right? And then being written off for that. And I'm just like, nope, that one's not cool. We're going with that's not an opinion. This is a statement of fact. This is what the word means. These are the people you're injuring by using it. Don't use it. Sorry, not taking that as an opinion. I get that, you can think that way, but it's wrong. We're saying that. I'm not putting any qualifiers on it. It's wrong. Don't use that word casually. So then we dive into womansplaining. I said womansplaining can be a thing when men are constantly attacked on all sides by people speaking over them, ignoring them, having women promoted instead of them, getting demeaning, condescending messages nonstop. Women can't walk alone, they can't live on the first floor, they make less money, they pay more in services. They get spoken over and ignored. They're viewed as inferior. They are demeaned at every step of life. So yeah, guys constantly do that to you, it gets a term. That's why we get to say mansplaining, all right? That's why it gets to be a term. That's my response there. Now on to the discussion about conversations. Having conversations is 100% a thing. People are not always right, but it is important to acknowledge that more often men are believed while women are forced to prove things, meaning women have to deal with being challenged and corrected and demeaned way more often. My advice is to ask a question rather than offer a statement. The statement, purple is better, versus what do you think about purple here is different. One assumes complete knowledge and superiority, and one approaches as an equal that respects the other person. And I think I like this example. It's not an example about anything specific. Purple is not controversial, but think about this. If you are in a design meeting or someone tweets out a logo, and if I tweet out a logo, I love pink and green, and I tweet, I love my new logo. The colors here are great. And someone says, purple would have been better, or you should have used purple. That is completely diminishing the entire design thought process and personal preferences that I have gone through. But if someone says, hey, have you thought about using purple for this part of your logo? I think it might make it pop better. That might still be a little annoying because it's like, no, I don't like purple or blah, blah, blah. But that is saying, I think this is my opinion. I'm not necessarily right. There are things you can be right and wrong on. There are things that you can be right and wrong on that's still inappropriate to challenge someone on. And there are things that are truly opinions. And just because you personally think your opinion is superior does not mean you get to just slam it on someone. Opinions it can slam someone on, don't use rape casually. Opinions you probably can't slam someone on is whether or not they should have used purple, pink logo. So that's my example. I used it in a couple of comments to kind of explain the difference. Asking questions comes from a place of equality and respect. Pushing out demands and definitive statements on subjective things really, really diminishes the other person and tells you how little you. And I know it's this like offensive, attacking term. But let's work on redefining that. Let's work on understanding that what that term represents is that there are ingrained social and psychological trends in which women more often are talked over, more proof is required from them, and they are demeaned and have basic concepts explained to them and assumptions made and other people's opinions shoved on them nonstop. Okay, let's think about, like, that's what that term represents as a trend. It is not an attack on an individual. It is a representation of psychological and social issues that women are forced to deal with. Chain, right? This is all explaining why mansplaining is a problem. Okay, so we've talked about how women get talked over, they get paid less, they get demeaned, they don't get promoted as often, they don't get raises as often, all these things. His response: I find some of your arguments very anecdotal. Everybody who ever tried to find proof for the wage gap has found out that it's not real, at least not in the sense it is presented. Men don't make more money for the same position. There are multiple factors that take place there. I hope you are aware of that. Okay. So my statement that the wage gap exists is anecdotal. His statement that men don't make more money, not anecdotal. Okay, I have something for this. Let's just take a look at this right here. A sheet went around Blizzard. Went around Blizzard, and everybody filled out their salaries and for their job, right? And at a company as large as Blizzard, these jobs are usually fairly standardized. Now, I looked at the senior designer level 1 job, and I found someone listed who has $100,000 as their salary for their job. They say it received 10% salary adjustment due to gender pay disparity a few years ago. That was them talking about the raises that they had gotten. This was a column about raises. I think we can pretty reliably assume that this person is a woman, which means that at Blizzard, it was pointed out that in the same role, men were making more money than women. Then you look at all of the roles. These are all 4 roles. It could all 4 be women. We don't know. Seems unlikely with the way that demographics in video games work. Let's assume these are not all women. Strong assumption this is a woman. Let's assume these are not women. Someone who was just promoted this cycle to this job, just promoted, brand new to the job, is making more money than someone who has clearly been in the job long enough to have received a salary adjustment a few years ago and still be in the job. So definitely has more experience. And then let's talk about, you know, these other 2. These are all design. Okay, so that's Blizzard. So that's people in the same job. Okay. Let's do something else, okay? Let's go on an incognito browser. No browsing history here, nothing to bias it. Gender wage gap in Google Scholar. First link. The gender wage gap, extent, trends, and explanations. Okay. The gender pay gap declined much more slowly at the top of the wage distribution than the middle or the bottom, and by 2010 was noticeably higher at the top. So it's saying by 2010, conventional human capital variables taken together explain little of the gender wage gap. Gender differences in occupation continue to be important. Extent and trends in the gender wage gap have declined considerably during this time. Okay, that's great news. The gender wage gap has declined. Okay, well, let's see. There's a gender wage gap. Gender differences in occupation and industry are important. There's a gender pay gap that's worse at the top. Let's see. Strongly suggests that discrimination cannot be discounted. Okay, that's our first one. All right, so this one, wage gap exists, it's worse than these things, it's getting better, but wage gap exists. Okay, let's try the next one. A meta-analysis of the international gender wage gap. This meta-study provides a new quantitative review in this vast amount of empirical literature on gender wage differentials. Emphasis on proper consideration of the quality of underlying studies. So this is a review that's looking at a bunch of different studies. Right. They're able to show what effect a misspecification of the underlying wage equation, frequent use of potential experience, has on the calculated gender wage gap. Over time, raw wage differentials have fallen substantially. However, most of this decrease is due to better labor market endowments of females. So, goes through all the other studies, talks about how they've done things right. Now, we have to pay to look at the full articles. So we just have to take these by abstract. Again, over time, wage differentials worldwide have fallen. Most of this is due to better labor market endowment of females. What this basically means is that women are getting more education so that the gender wage gap is getting better. Okay, this is a book. I'm not looking at a book. The Gender Wage Gap and Domestic Violence. Oh, this sounds interesting. 3/4 of all violence against women is perpetuated by domestic partners. Fun. This study exploits exogenous data and the changes in demand for labor in female-dominated industries to estimate the impact of the male-female wage gap on domestic violence. Decreases in the wage gap reduce violence against women. Cool. Not that much about the gender wage gap, but good to know. Hey, if we acknowledge that the wage gap exists and do something about it, there'd be less domestic violence against women. Isn't that nifty? Fun fact. There's a lot of issues. The one that people like to bring up is that women work less because they have to take care of children, so they deserve to be paid more. The reality is that men expect women to do all the fucking work with children. So, and then it's also like women won't get promoted because they're expected to leave and have children, or because they're expected to deal with them, and guys aren't expected to have to be the parent. That has a lot to do with it. And so they're like, it's not real because women haven't been working for as long. And I'm like, but you understand that, like, there's serious bias here, and that you shouldn't just not promote someone because she might get pregnant. You know what? You shouldn't not promote a dude because he goes skydiving on the weekends and might break his leg and then be out of work for several months. Like, what is that rationality? There's also another thing with the wage gap is that people like to blame women and say that it's because they have less confidence, so they don't ask for raises as often. And there have been studies refuting that, saying women ask for raises just as often, but they're penalized for it. So they are viewed negatively by their peers. They are told that they're not being part of the team. They are seen as greedy. There are studies that show that men are promoted on potential, whereas women are promoted on hard results. So men will get promoted based on what they say they can do. Women have to prove that they can do it again and again and again in order to be promoted. So those all tie into it, which is super fun. Okay, we can do a little bit more. Let's see, the next one. Separate and unequal. Occupation, establishment, sex segregation, and the gender wage gap. Wage differences between men and women in the same occupation and establishment, using data first on blue-collar and clerical employees, and second on employees in 10 professional administrative occupations. The authors report 3 findings. First, wage differences at the occupation establishment level were small, even without controls for individual level characteristics. Hence, within job wage discrimination was much less important than occupation establishment segregation for observed wage differences. Second, establishment segregation was an important cause, although not as important as occupational segregation of wage differences. Third, establishment segregation was extensive, as was occupational segregation. So, this is probably the mental path that that initial comment was following, was that in the exact same job, in very specific, well-defined roles where they had the same job, the pay differences are minimal. Cool. What this then goes into, though, is that establishment segregation, which I believe what they're talking about is within the company. What you'll see is that women only get promoted up to a certain level. So fellow people will make the same amount as them, but then they'll never get promoted and make more. So people will argue that it's not a thing because men and women in the same position are making the same amount of money. Now, as I showed the Blizzard example, not always true. And also, again, promotion becomes an issue there. So, that article's a little bit to his point, but then has all these caveats saying, hey, guess what? This is still a problem. Let's see. Working for the women, female managers, and the gender wage gap. Let's see what this one says. Most research. Ooh, glass ceiling. Okay, this is what we're talking about. Let's see what it says. We'll see if I'm wrong or not. Most previous research on gender inequality in management has concerned with the question of access to managerial jobs and the glass ceiling. We offer the first large-scale analysis that turns this question around, asking whether the gender characteristics of managers, specifically the gender composition and relative status of female managers, affect the inequality for non-managerial workers beneath them. Oh. Wait, here we go. Suggests the greater representation of women in management does narrow the gender wage gap. Model predictions show, however, that the presence of high-status female managers has a much larger impact on gender wage inequality. We conclude that the promotion of women into management positions may benefit all women, but only if female managers reach relatively high status positions. So this one is saying, yo, gender wage gap is real. We need to promote more women. That's what that one says. So I feel like clicking the top studies, there was a pretty good demonstration of, you know, what probably exists. Probably. Take a strong guess there. Traditional female role jobs are like nurses, teachers, etc. And I think it's pretty universally considered that teachers are underpaid for the they do valued. So let's also keep that in mind. Solution: no more children. Solve this problem and environment in one go. Joking mostly. Now, kind of. Okay, so let's go back to the comment now. We've gone through all of that. We've talked about the gender wage gap, and we've demonstrated, I specifically said in the previous comment, women have to prove things, men can just state them. What does he do? He challenges me and says, that's anecdotal. You don't have any proof. Here's my anecdotal side, okay? Come on. All right, I agree that rape should only be used as a sexual assault term. Ooh, awesome. Read the next sentence. I am willing to exchange men not using it if women start using it correctly instead of calling every regret sex rape. I'm willing that men should stop using it when they get mad in a video game if women stop using it for every regret sex. Here it is, folks! Let's bring out the false accusations are ruining men everywhere. Let's ignore the non-stop studies saying that false accusations are an incredibly tiny thing and barely a problem. Okay, let's ignore all of that. Let's blame women. We are going to blame women. It's their fault that people use rape. Now, he does acknowledge that this is anecdotal. Using the word in the context you disagree with has been around for decades, and I do not think it made the power of that word any weaker. False accusations, though, those made the word so weak. Men casually using rape in gaming has not diminished the meaning of the word. It's women and their false accusations that are to blame. That was an unironic comment. So that happened. That happened. Okay. So again, he's continuing. Every right to continue here. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not trying to belittle any statements you're saying. Again, he is trying to have a good faith engagement. Once again, I will state that I feel bad calling out someone so aggressively like I am right now, but you can see why I couldn't resist. Okay. Trying not to belittle you, but I do have the discussions with my wife and friends, and I have yet to find somebody close to me who would feel a certain way about some of the stuff you're talking about, living on the first floor, walking alone. I know you don't want to hear this, but I sometimes am scared when I walk alone. I have yet to find someone close to me who feels uncomfortable walking alone. I know you don't want to hear this, but I feel uncomfortable walking alone.
What?
I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't. I don't understand. I don't get it. Somebody, please. Yeah. Yeah. That happened. I have yet to find somebody who is close to me who would feel a certain way about some of the stuff you're talking about. Living on the first floor, walking alone. I know you don't want to hear this, but sometimes I am scared when I walk alone. Okay. Would it be a beautiful world where nobody would be scared? Sure, but until then, we all need to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep us safe. For some, the action may differ. I might not be as scared because my physical proportion is more intimidating than my friend's who weighs 110 pounds. So he's telling me that people don't feel scared when they walk alone, and then straight up telling me that people have to take precautions and that they are scared and they do take precautions. Well, okay. I ask my wife constantly if she remembers a time where she would feel threatened only because she's a woman, and we couldn't figure it out. So, because his wife can't think of a time, all of the times I've experienced don't mean that it's. I saw a TikTok that was a woman who had just gotten in her car. She walked into the mall and 3 guys started following her, talking about how they wanted to hit that, tap that, just a little fun. Followed her from store to store. She ducked away, waiting for them to walk by. And she went later to the food court, was waiting in line, and one guy walked up behind her and leaned in and whispered in her ears something along the lines of like, let's go have some fun, baby, whatever, something like that. She had to go and wait with a police security officer until the men left. Hey, men! How many of those stories you hear about a group of women chasing down a man? How often that happens? I'm sure it does. How often? Because I've had it happen to me a lot. I've had guys pull over their car and roll down the window to talk to me. I've had them honk when they roll by. I've been sitting at a stoplight and had someone ask me if I want to go for a ride. I've had people follow me back to my apartment. I've had people follow me around a grocery store and ask me out. I've had people follow me around a hardware store and ask me out. How often that happened to you? Okay. So, but it's not happened to his wife that she can remember. Okay. Maybe he's yet to find someone willing to tell him the truth because he's obviously on the other side. Maybe he just doesn't listen. Because I hear these stories endlessly, and I could tell these stories endlessly. And I have. When all the Me Too stuff broke in Dota. What, that was a 2.5-hour stream that I told story after story after story. You know why some women don't have those stories? Because some women don't walk alone. Because some women get married at 19 and their husbands go with them everywhere. Nothing against those women. That's not demeaning them in any way. But you know why some women don't have those stories? Because they're never alone. Because they're taught that they always have to rely on someone else. Because whatever life choices they've made meant they never have to be alone. Because deep down, it's too scary to be alone, and even if they don't acknowledge it, they know it keeps them from driving out to the grocery store at 10 p.m. for something hot, checking the mail late at night, or for walking with their key in their hand, ready to stab someone with it when they get in their car late at night, or never being somewhere at their car late at night because someone comes and picks them up. Always texting someone when you get into your Lyft or your. Always letting someone know when you've gotten home safely, hoping they notice if you don't text and call just in case. Those stories are everywhere. I haven't heard. Actively not listening. You are actively not listening if you have not heard those stories. So, it's another problem here. And the worst in all of this is that when I tell my story, It's not saying that he doesn't feel unsafe at night. It's not saying this is just women. It's saying that women feel unsafe every single time. It's that women change their lives and bend over backwards to avoid dangerous scenarios. It's that there are a million other things going through our head. You might be walking home and it's later than you think, and you're like, oh wow, this is a little uncomfortable. And be like, man, I feel unsafe. That woman has probably spent the entire day dreading and planning and thinking, well, if I don't start this now, I won't be able to leave by then, and then I'm gonna have to go home in the dark, but what if I do it this way? And maybe the whole day has been around planning, avoiding that. That's the privilege there. When you talk about one thing, it is not diminishing the struggle someone else faces. It's just talking about that one thing. And that is what is so frustrating. I talk about mansplaining and I get, well, what about womansplaining? We're not talking about that. And it's very frustrating. It is incredibly frustrating. If anybody learns anything from this, please learn how to check that. When someone is complaining about something, when someone is upset, when there is a problem, learn how to remove yourself from it. This is all about empathy and compassion. And yeah, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna project. Fine, be correct, be willing to listen. Remove yourself. Really try. Unless it is about you, and then be like, yo, that happened to me too! Just like that, just like that. Typing like this is a real. Let's continue. All I know is I want to raise my son in a way he makes people around him feel safe. Love that. Very accurate. Learn how to not threaten women. Great idea. Or like people, really. Learn how to not threaten people. Great idea. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I just replied out of curiosity. I come from a different culture. Again, this guy, he's really trying to have good faith interactions. He's just failing miserably. Okay, some of this stuff is still kind of new. I remember throughout my high school, we would throw the N-word so freaking casually around because the American culture was hitting us hard and we kept hearing it from songs. Some stuff you gotta learn the hard way. But about the rape thing, I usually say it when I lose a game because I do feel violated. I guess it got stuck in me with some jokes about uploading the replay to Pornhub section. Better not be a thing. If me stopping to saying that makes you feel more comfortable, sure, I can do that, but I ain't saying wrecked. That sounds ridiculous. I think that comment's better, right? But he still says, if it makes you uncomfortable, I can stop saying it. And I'm like, yeah, that's progress. I prefer you understood why. Because saying that, like, you use it because you feel violated is pretty offensive to people who've actually had that happen. So that's a little problematic. Okay, so anyway, I said, do you realize you just put the blame on women? So again, I'd like to point out, he's trying. It just didn't go so well for him. But he did try. You know, there's people out there that are not even trying. That's, again, why I feel bad. I shouldn't feel bad. Based on what we have said, I should not feel bad. So, I said, do you realize you're blaming women? He says, for belittling the word rape, yes. It is my opinion that women using false accusations makes the word weaker. It is my opinion to which I'm entitled to have, just as it is your opinion that using it in gaming is wrong. I just watched the case of someone falsely accusing a guy whose life got basically destroyed. I don't think I blamed her because she's a woman. I blamed her because it's a shitty thing to do. I do not judge people based on their skin color or gender. I judge them based on their actions or personality. I understand it might be a hard concept to grasp, but that's just how my life has been. It's a lot of comments, Dean. It's a lot of comments. So that's how it ended, and I elected to not reply. Yes, the ending is very condescending. Thank you for saying it, because I was thinking that. I understand it. It might be a hard concept to but yeah, so this is just, there are cultural differences with everything. There are language barriers with everything. There's some things in this comment chain that are looking to be helpful. But ultimately, I wanted to show this because it's such a clear example of someone who thinks that they're an ally and someone who thinks that they're listening, but at every single step of the way, they are exactly perpetuating the very things I said that happen. Then when I say these happen, they go, oh, that's anecdotal, that doesn't happen. Here, let me explain it for you. But so anyway, that is the spiel. And once again, I should not have to apologize for pointing out problematic comments. Because as we went through, for those here live or people watching it later, there were problematic comments. But I still feel bad because people asking questions and looking to learn should not be mocked. But when you are looking to learn and you in fact start doing the very things people are telling you happen and then dismissing that those happen, that sort of is one straw too many, and it's time to shut that down. So anyways, that was just kind of a look at, I don't know what to call it, maybe problematic allyship, but there are people who genuinely think that they are strong allies and that they are open and willing to learn and listen. And it is important that all of us confront how truly willing we are to listen. There are some things that I know that I am very obstinate on and I don't think I'm ready to learn or listen about. And it is important to acknowledge and understand that and try and find ways to open yourself up. Because if you truly believe that you are an ally and someone is attempting to educate you and you keep telling them that you are wrong, that they are wrong, and refusing to listen, that's problematic. So problematic allyship is a thing. Mansplaining is a thing. The wage gap is real. Don't use rape casually. Women have to go through a lot of stuff. That does not diminish the other things people have to go through. This is going to end up being a very serious video. And I am sorry that it's a bunch of serious angry. It's not angry. It's going to be called angry. It said that I'm just yelling and why don't I calm down? So keep in mind all these caveats that I have to add because I'm a woman and being passionate is seen as emotionally negative and angry. You can't control yourself, and calling someone out is seen as being a shrew feminist, and all that is wrapped up into this problematic bubble of it is very, very hard to speak up about these things because everybody gets very defensive. Ultimately, while I am irritated and I am angry about the comments and messages that we went through, I do understand that the person whose comments I showed was attempting to engage in good faith. It went poorly. And my goal here is only to educate in the future for other people attempting to engage in good faith some of the common pitfalls, how to recognize and acknowledge them. And I will once again apologize, even though I should not have to, that I don't want to attack someone. It just is necessary here as a learning experience. So hopefully you learned something. And we'll see what I learn next and what I was wrong about in the future. Who knows?